Hey, I'm Kenneth, and I just finished the GMTK Game Jam. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's a 48-hour period where people can enter to make games, hosted by a very popular YouTube channel. This Game Jam in particular ends up getting thousands and thousands of entries, but I thought it would be fun to join in. The games created for a Game Jam all have to fit a particular theme, and the theme for this jam?
The theme is joined together. I want to see games where at least two elements are connected together in some way. What does it mean for them to be joined? What does it mean for that connection to break?
I had a very interesting set of circumstances for this Game Jam in that it started on June 11th at 11 a.m. On June 10th at 2 p.m., I got the second dose of my COVID vaccine, which meant right around when the jam started is right around when I started to feel like I had the flu. I originally planned on dropping out of the jam if I felt too sick to work. When the theme was announced, I was having some feverish symptoms. I felt extremely hot and extremely cold, which is really what influenced the game I ended up making. Because my brain was totally absorbed by those flu symptoms, I ended up making a game set in a snowstorm where you play as like a little flame spirit. It was the only thing that truly represented how I felt at that time. Now, the theme was joined together, so I wanted to have one character in a little winter coat that was like lost in the snowstorm, and this little flame sprite was trying to help guide him home. And the main character could only move by following his little flame spirit buddy. I created the characters, got them imported into Godot, and got the movement all set up, and that's when my flu symptoms really started to kick in and made it too hard for me to work. So at about 3 p.m. or so, I went and laid down. I woke up 5 hours later feeling awful, but knowing that if I didn't go get to work on it now, it probably meant I just wasn't doing the jam. And I got really attached to my two little main characters that I drew before I went to sleep. So I got on and I got to designing the level. What I wanted to do with these characters was to make like a little puzzle game where the flame spirit guides the main character through the levels. And because their movement is joined together, I wanted it to be so that the puzzles relied around trying to sever that connection so that the flame spirit could do things to set up the path for the main character. But I'd already burned 5 hours of the 48-hour jam sleeping because I had the flu, so I knew I didn't actually have that much time for the level design and the overall game design if I also wanted time to make the art and sound and polish. So I figured, before I go back to sleep tonight, I need to finish the level design. So I got to it. I decided I wanted to do 5 total puzzle levels. That doesn't include any levels that are like tutorial or setting up the story or any kind of ending thing. I just wanted 5 main puzzles. And for each puzzle, I wanted there to be like a core contradiction. You get to a certain point and you want to do a thing, but you can't do that thing without setting it up correctly. Puzzles where you want to melt this obstacle with the flame spirit, but you also don't want your character following you. But if you move over here to melt this, he will follow you. So you have to break that command. Or you want to unfreeze this so that you can press this button to lower it, but if you go over there to unfreeze it, you can't press the button, that sort of thing. And it was a struggle to set up these levels because my brain was just not really working. I had just a general sense of malaise and I just felt horrible. Is that how you pronounce malaise?
Malaise.
But I just felt awful. And so I ended up making 5 levels by talking with a friend of mine who's a huge puzzle enthusiast and getting his perspective on it. I will say, he told me not to do the 5th level the way I thought of it. He said it wasn't a good puzzle, but by that point, it was already about 2 a.m. and I didn't have any more time to set up more puzzles. So I was like, if I want a 5th level, it has to be this one. One of the most common pieces of feedback I've gotten about my game is that 5th puzzle level is not very obvious and not very direct, and it doesn't feel good, so I should have listened to that friend of mine. But, you know, the past is the past. So after getting the entire, like, gameplay loop set up, so in theory, I could upload it because you could play through the puzzles, that left the next day to making the art and polish and sound effects and all that good juice that makes a game feel awesome. Now, I'm not the greatest pixel artist, but one of the things I really want to do as a part of becoming a better game dev is working on my pixel art. I would love to be able to make awesome pixel art, but it takes practice. And so I got to the task of drawing all the individual pieces of art that I needed for the game. Ice blocks, little obelisks, buttons, floating ice platforms, the ground, a little like tree vignette, a cabin for the end of the game. And although I'm not too happy with the obelisks and the ice blocks look a little funny, I think overall the art came out pretty good. So I replaced all the placeholder art and then started adding the juice, adding a nice screen shake when blocks fall or when you melt something, adding sound effects to the different elements as they occur. And one of the core mechanics that you interact in the game with is that melt ability where you hover the flame sprite over an object and cause it to explode. And I really wanted that to feel good, so I added so many different layers of juice to it. The sprite has a shake on it, it emits more particles, it glows harder, there's a nice sound effect that slowly builds up over time. And then when it finally does melt, it plays 3 different sound effects, one of like a tiny explosion, one of some ice shattering, and one of a water splash, and plays 2 separate particle effects, one where I took a little sprite that looked like a chunk of the ice cube and have it spray over, and one that's a little bit of a splash behind the flame sprite, in addition to having a screen shape when it explodes. So I added as much juice as possible to that melting effect, since it was the main way you interact with the game. And that left making a title screen and an ending for the game. For the title screen, I just did some pixel art lettering and set it up on like a little stage, and then I also made it so the 2 characters were on the title screen and would walk towards the button when you hovered it, and then walk away when you stopped hovering it. I just thought it added a nice little level of polish to the title screen and made people like, ooh yeah, I kind of want to play this game. And then I also needed a little bit of a tutorial. There wasn't too much of a tutorial necessary. You click to move and everything else feels pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted just a little bit of text to hover on screen, and I put it from the perspective of the flame sprite, since that's actually the character you're controlling, and I think it gave a little bit of personality to the flame sprite as well. I chose choices in the language that made it feel more like they were connected, like he wanted to guide his human home, and then when it gives you the retry prompt, it says I can press R if we get stuck, not if I get stuck or if you get stuck, if we get stuck, to make it seem like the flame sprite and the character are one. Just a little bit of personality injected in there. And then I added the ending cutscene, which I won't spoil if you haven't played the game yet, but I think it's really cute. And that's also another piece of feedback, is people really like the little ending to my game. And I really wanted to have it in there to paint a nice complete picture of the gameplay, so that it felt like you had a whole package. And that's just programmed in with timers. Once you get to that level, the game just takes over and runs the ending cutscene on a timer. It's not the best way to implement it, but I was running out of time and it worked. And that's pretty much the whole game, except I didn't mention the music. I think the music in my game is so beautiful, and if I get real quiet right now, I think you might be able to hear it in the background. That track was made by the lovely and talented INSANDIO. When I told her I was working on the jam, she said she would make some music for me after I sent her the prototype, and she liked the art and liked the style. She was like, ooh, I want to add some music to that. So she made a track for me to use rather than creating my own. I'll link her SoundCloud and Twitter and all her socials and stuff in the description so that you can check out her music if you're interested in it. It's very good. I'm super happy with how it ties the whole package and atmosphere together. And that's the story of my game jam. I was really sick, but still somehow got something released. And maybe that's a good moral or something. I don't know. I think the end result is really good. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And you should go give it a try if you haven't played it yet, because I think it's really fun. And I think the puzzles, except for maybe the last one, are pretty satisfying. You kind of feel smart when you figure it out, you know? It really gives you that aha moment. Well, I think that's the video. I didn't really script this because that's hard and I'm not good at it. But if you liked it, or you liked the game, or you just like my face, then go ahead and hit that like button, maybe subscribe, maybe leave a comment if you're feeling ever so generous. Yeah, I don't know how to end a video. Let me try this. Did that work? Who knows? That's close enough to the end of a video, right? What am I even doing?